People always imagine betrayal arrives like thunder, loud, violent, impossible to miss. Truth is, it creeps in quieter, like the faint smell of smoke before you see flames, or the draft under a locked door. For me, it showed up in the form of laughter. My wife's laughter, to be exact. Not the warm, real one I fell for, but this dry, hollow little chuckle she reserved for texts she thought I didn't notice. That laugh was my first clue that I wasn't her husband anymore. I was just a placeholder. Funny thing, I wasn't broken when I realized it. Hurt, sure, but heartbreak doesn't shatter men like me. It sharpens us. I've spent a lifetime fixing machines with tolerances thinner than a human hair. You think I can't diagnose the mechanics of a failing marriage? Please. What stung wasn't that she cheated. It was that she thought I'd be too blind, too dull, to notice. And that was her first mistake. Because if you want to lie to me, you'd better pray you're better at hiding evidence than I am at finding it. That night, she strutted around in her robe, pretending everything was fine. I smiled. I nodded. I even kissed her forehead like nothing had changed. But when she went to bed, I stayed up. Opened the drawer in my office. Took out the oak box I'd carved years ago, back when I thought anniversaries meant something. It was empty then. It wouldn't stay that way for long. The printer hummed to life. One by one, the receipts slid out. Hotel bills she swore were work trips, emails forwarded by friends, text threads she didn't know I had synced to the iPad. Each page stacked neatly into the box, like ammunition. She thought she was playing chess, moving in secret. But I was already 5 moves ahead, building a case while she built a fantasy. And when she finally looked me in the eye again, I'd be ready. The next morning, she floated into the kitchen humming some pop song from the early 2000s, like she was 20 again. Her robe swished, her hair in a messy bun, the picture of casual innocence. I was already at the counter, buttering toast, scrolling on my phone like nothing had changed. She stole a piece of my breakfast and grinned. "You're sweet," she said, sipping her coffee. "I knew you'd get over it." "Over it?" I asked. She smirked, eyes glued to her phone. "You're so dramatic sometimes." Dramatic. That word hung between us like poison. Meanwhile, her screen lit up with another buzz. She tilted the phone just enough for me to see a name I already knew too well. Mr. Contractor. The one I once offered a beer after he fixed our deck. The one who was now fixing things she claimed I couldn't. I kept my eyes on the toast. "Got a busy day?" She shrugged. "Meeting a client for lunch. Shouldn't be late." Sure. Just like she hadn't been late last Tuesday or the Tuesday before that. Always the same hotel wallpaper in the photos. Always the same lies. When she left, the house fell silent again, my kind of silence. I sat in the office, opened the oak box, and dropped in the latest screenshot I'd printed. "I needed that last night," her message read. His reply, a photo of him grinning like an idiot, bathroom mirror behind him. Timestamp, 1:42 p.m. The same time she told me she was stuck in a board meeting. The more I stacked, the calmer I felt. Not rage, not heartbreak, just strategy. Like lining up dominoes and knowing exactly how, and when, they'd fall. That evening, when she came home with her fake smile energy, she asked, "Did you miss me?" I smiled back. "Always." And here's the funny part. She actually believed me. By Thursday, I'd already mapped her little routine like a military exercise. 10 a.m., makeup. Noon, client lunch. 3 p.m., silence while she played house in some hotel room that smelled like cheap lavender. So when she breezed through the front door that evening, dropping her purse on the couch with a flourish, I was already sitting there waiting. Not angry, just patient. "How was your meeting?" I asked, flipping through a magazine I had no intention of reading. "Exhausting," she sighed, throwing herself onto the armchair like she was auditioning for a soap opera. "Clients just never know what they want." "Yeah," I said, turning a page. "Hard to keep people satisfied." She looked up, narrowing her eyes for half a second. Then, just like that, the suspicion passed. She thought she was clever. She thought I was blind. Later that night, she slid into bed and tried to curl against me, her version of damage control. That smug little robe she always wore when she wanted to remind me she was still my wife. "You didn't say goodnight," she whispered. "I figured you were tired of touching me," I said with a smile. Her eyes flickered. Just for a second. She muttered, "You're being dramatic again," rolled over, and went still. I stared at the ceiling until her breathing evened out. Then I slipped out of bed, padded down the hall, and pulled up the synced messages on the iPad. That night's highlight reel. Can't wait for tomorrow, winking face from her. Bring that robe I like from him. I laughed. Quiet. Hollow. Because the robe she wore to bed with me was the same robe she wore for him. I saved the screenshots, printed them, and added them to the oak box. It was filling up nicely. She thought she was living a double life. What she didn't realize was that I was already writing the ending for both of us. The thing about betrayal is that it's loud only to the one who notices it. To everyone else, life just trudges along like nothing happened. Neighbors waved when I mowed the lawn. My boss asked if I wanted to grab a beer after work. Even the dog trotted up with the same old tail wag, blissfully unaware his family dynamic was circling the drain. But me? Every sound, every look, every harmless phrase from her mouth was amplified. And the more she underestimated me, the calmer I became. That calmness wasn't weakness, it was precision. Take Friday, for example. She strolled into the kitchen that morning wearing gym leggings and a sports bra, like she'd suddenly discovered a passion for fitness. I watched her dig through the fridge for almond milk. Early workout. I asked casually, tying my tie at the counter. She nodded, a little too fast. Yeah, spin class with Trish. We're trying to hold each other accountable. Trish, who had posted an Instagram story 20 minutes earlier from Florida. On a boat. With her husband. I sipped my coffee. Good for you. Discipline's everything. She smiled like I'd handed her a gold star. Then she grabbed her keys and practically sprinted out the door. The moment her car disappeared, I walked back to the office, opened my laptop, and logged into the shared phone plan account. It took 30 seconds to confirm what I already knew. There had been no call to Trish that morning. No coordination, no accountability partner. Just another thread in the ugly quilt she was sewing behind my back. I printed the call log and dropped it into the oak box. The pages were stacking so high the lid barely closed. By noon, she texted me. Lunch ran long. Don't wait for me. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I set my phone down, logged onto the iPad, and refreshed the synced messages. Right on schedule, there it was. Her, still thinking about last night. You're dangerous, winking face. Him, save some energy. Tonight's gonna be better. My wife. My legally wedded spouse. Using emojis like a teenager sneaking notes in class. Instead of rage, I felt something colder. Like metal clicking into place. See, the mistake most men make is confronting too early. They storm in, demanding answers, fueled by emotion. That never works. Emotion doesn't win wars. Documentation does. So I kept building. I created 3 separate folders: digital copies, physical copies, and cloud backups. I named the master file June Justice. The irony? She always mocked me for being slow. You move like you're buffering, she once told her friends, right in front of me. They all laughed. I smiled, because she thought my deliberate nature was laziness. What she never realized was that slow men don't stumble. They aim. That night, she came home glowing. Her skin flushed, her hair tousled like she'd been running through a wind tunnel. She kissed me on the cheek as she passed, the kind of distracted peck you give a relative. You didn't have to wait up, she said, dropping her purse. I wasn't waiting, I said. Just working. She glanced at the computer screen in my office. All she saw was spreadsheets. She had no idea the real file, the one with her name all over it, was minimized, humming quietly like a time bomb. She poured herself a glass of wine, kicked her shoes off, and plopped onto the couch. We should do a trip soon, she said suddenly. Somewhere tropical. Just us. I almost laughed. Just us. I pictured her in some resort bar, sneaking away under the pretense of checking emails. But instead, I nodded. Sounds great. Because agreeing was easier. Agreeing kept the game alive. Saturday morning, I decided to test her. Want to go out to breakfast? I asked, tossing her keys onto the table. That little diner off Main Street. We haven't been in ages. Her face froze, just for half a second. Then she forced a smile. Rain check? I promised my mom I'd call her this morning. Of course, I said, standing. Family first. The moment she disappeared upstairs with her phone, I slipped outside, climbed into my truck, and followed her car as it pulled out 15 minutes later. She didn't head toward her mom's house. She didn't even stay in town. She drove straight to the Burstone Hotel, the same one with the lavender lobby I knew too well. I parked 2 blocks away, camera ready. Through the zoom lens, I saw him waiting for her near the entrance. Contractor boy. Same smug posture, same cheap leather jacket. She ran to him like some teenage crush, arms wrapped tight, lips pressed against his like she'd forgotten cameras exist in the 21st century. Click, click, click. 3 perfect photos, each time-stamped, each saved. I leaned back in the seat, exhaled, and smiled. The box would love these. That afternoon, I returned home before she did. I had time to mow the lawn, clean the garage, even patch the squeaky hinge on the back door. By the time she walked in, flushed and glowing again, the house looked like the home of a happy couple. "How was your mom?" I asked, wiping my hands on a rag. She blinked, caught off guard, then quickly recovered. "Good. We had a nice chat." "Glad to hear it," I said warmly. She had no idea I had the entire chat printed in full-color photographs on my desk. That evening, I stood in front of the mirror in the hall. I looked older, sure. Wrinkles lined my forehead. My hands weren't as steady as they used to be. But behind the gray hair and the tired eyes, I saw something she had overlooked. Resolve. She had chosen to play games with a man who never gambled. And the odds were already stacked against her. I whispered to my own reflection, "You don't need second chances. You need evidence." And I had more than enough of that. That night, as she drifted off beside me, breathing slow and steady, I opened my phone and sent one email. Just one. To my lawyer. Subject line, "Ready when you are." Then I placed the phone face down, closed my eyes, and let myself drift into the best sleep I'd had in months. Because this wasn't heartbreak anymore. This was preparation. And preparation always wins. Monday mornings were always predictable in our house. She'd come downstairs in her serious blazer, phone glued to her hand, rattling off about clients and commissions while I sat with my coffee, nodding like a well-trained Labrador. But that particular Monday was different. She strutted in with that smug little half-smile, holding her phone like it contained the secrets of the universe. "Big week ahead," she announced, grabbing a piece of toast from my plate. "Might be late a few nights." I took a sip of coffee. Late? Or birthstone late? Her hand froze midair, just for a moment. Then she laughed, dismissive. "God, you're paranoid. You really need to stop reading those crime thrillers." I smiled. "You're right." She thought she'd dodged it. She thought I was joking. That was fine. Let her. Because by that time, my lawyer had already responded to the email I'd sent Saturday night. "We can proceed quietly. Paperwork will be drafted. If you want to make it clean, you'll need leverage. The more, the better. Leverage. The one word cheaters never account for. They think affairs are about passion, about escape, about chasing lost youth. They never stop to think about bank accounts, shared assets, tax filings, custody agreements. Affairs are romantic until they're financial. Then they become math. And math is my language." By noon that day, while she pretended to lunch with clients, I met with my lawyer, Marcus, in a quiet corner of a downtown cafe. He was a tall man with a calm demeanor, the kind of guy who could tell you you're bankrupt and you'd thank him for his tone. "You've already done most of the heavy lifting," he said, flipping through the folder I slid across the table. "Photos, receipts, call logs. This is airtight. She can't walk away with half of what you've built if we frame this right." I leaned back. "Half? She won't walk away with a quarter." He raised an eyebrow. "You want to go aggressive?" "Marcus," I said, folding my hands on the table, "I'm not just divorcing her. I'm dismantling her." He nodded slowly, like a doctor delivering a diagnosis. "All right then, we'll play it your way." That evening, I tested the waters again. She came home with her makeup smudged, hair slightly undone. She threw her keys onto the counter, humming like she'd just won a prize. "Good day?" I asked. "Exhausting," she sighed dramatically. "But productive." I walked over, placed a hand on her shoulder, and said, "You deserve all the success in the world." Her eyes lit up, softening for just a second. She thought she still had me wrapped around her finger. That was her weakness, believing the mask was still working. Later that night, as she scrolled through Instagram in bed, I pretended to fall asleep. But my mind was wide awake, replaying Marcus's words, leverage. The first real move came Wednesday. I logged into our joint account before work. She always assumed I never paid attention to the numbers, that I just deposited my paycheck and let her handle expenses. Wrong. I'd been watching the patterns for months. And that morning, I quietly shifted a chunk of funds into a separate account under my name only. Legal. Documented. Untouchable. By the time she realized money was missing, the divorce would already be in motion. That night, She tried a little performance over dinner. I was thinking, she said between bites of salmon. Maybe we should finally upgrade the kitchen. New cabinets, better appliances. It would help resale value down the line. I nodded thoughtfully. Good idea. Why don't you get a contractor to draw up an estimate? She smirked. Oh, I already have someone in mind. Of course she did. The same someone who was helping her burn calories during her fake gym sessions. I forced a smile. Perfect. Can't wait to see the proposal. Inside, I was laughing, because what she didn't know was that the proposal I'd be showing her would come from Marcus, in the form of divorce papers. The turning point came Friday night. She was getting ready to meet Trish again. Tight dress, too much perfume, that little sparkle in her eye she hadn't worn for me in years. I stood by the doorway, arms crossed. Big night. I asked. She paused, lipstick in hand. Just dinner. With Trish. She turned slowly, meeting my eyes in the mirror. Yes. Why are you asking? Because Trish posted another boat selfie this morning, I said evenly. From Miami. Her face drained of color. For once, she had no script, no quick retort. Just silence. I let the silence hang. Then I smiled faintly. Drive safe. She left without another word. That night, I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. Because by then, the oak box was overflowing. Evidence stacked high, airtight, undeniable. Saturday morning, I staged my own performance. I brewed coffee, cooked her favorite breakfast, pancakes, bacon, the whole spread. When she wandered in, hungover glow still on her face, I greeted her with a cheerful, "Morning, sunshine." She blinked, confused. "You're in a good mood." "I am," I said, sliding the plate across the table. "I've been thinking, maybe we should take that trip you mentioned. Just us." Her eyes lit up. She thought she'd won. She thought I was crawling back, desperate for scraps. "That's wonderful," she said, biting into the pancake. "Where were you thinking?" I smiled. "Somewhere warm. Tropical. A fresh start." She grinned, nodding eagerly. What she didn't realize was that I already had a destination in mind. Not a beach, not a resort. A courthouse. And the only thing she'd be starting fresh with was the cheap contractor who thought he'd won the lottery. That weekend, while she scrolled through Pinterest looking at swimsuits, I spent my evenings scanning documents into Marcus's encrypted drive. Bank statements, tax records, mortgage agreements. I even had screenshots of her little text exchanges labeled by date and time. When I was done, I closed the oak box one final time. The brass hinges clicked shut, neat and final. I whispered to it like an old friend, "See you in court." By Sunday night, she was back in full delusion mode, sipping wine on the couch, humming along to some reality show. She leaned over and kissed my cheek. "You're sweet," she murmured. I smiled at her. And for the first time in months, I wasn't pretending. Because sweetness wasn't surrender. Sweetness was camouflage, and the reveal was coming soon. Monday morning hit with its usual routine, but I wasn't the same man pouring coffee in that kitchen anymore. The difference wasn't visible, not yet. It was in the air, in the rhythm of my breathing, in the way I looked at her without looking at her. She walked in wearing another work blazer, hair still damp from her shower, tapping out a text before even saying good morning. The glow on her face told me exactly who was on the other end of that screen. "Busy week?" I asked, stirring sugar into my cup. "Insane," she sighed dramatically. "Clients, deadlines, conference calls. Might even have to travel soon." Travel. The same word she'd used a dozen times before. The word that really meant hotel sheets and late-night whispers. I raised my mug in a little toast. "Safe travels." Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, like she sensed something she couldn't name. That flicker was worth more to me than any confession. It meant she felt the shift. At the office, Marcus called. "You ready for phase 2? He asked. "I've been ready," I said. "We'll file this week. But first, we bait the hook." I smiled. Baiting was the easy part. She'd already swallowed the line months ago. Now all I had to do was reel. That evening, I set the trap without ever leaving the living room. She came home late again, tossing her shoes by the door and collapsing onto the couch. "God, I'm exhausted," she groaned, scrolling through her phone with one hand while sipping wine with the other. I sat across from her, calm, collected. "You know," I said casually, "I had lunch with Rick today. He says the housing market's about to explode. Perfect time to sell." Her eyes lit up instantly. "Sell? You mean this house?" "Why not?" I shrugged. Cash out while the value's high. Start fresh somewhere new. Just us. She leaned forward, practically glowing. That's actually a great idea. Of course she thought so. She was already picturing herself in a new kitchen, a new neighborhood, maybe even with a new man. She didn't realize the sale would do one thing only: convert everything into liquid assets. Assets she couldn't touch once Marcus filed the paperwork. Later that night, while she showered, I slipped into her office and opened her laptop. She'd never bothered with a password stronger than her birthday. Within minutes, I had her emails forwarded to a secure account. Bookings, invoices, love notes, all pouring in like confessions. One message stood out. Friday night was amazing. Let's do it again next week. Same place? Her reply. You read my mind. I'll tell him it's a client dinner. I printed it, signed the corner with today's date, and slipped it into the oak box. The next morning, she tried to test me. You've been quiet lately, she said as we drove to the grocery store. Just focused, I replied, eyes on the road. Focused on what? She pressed. I turned to her with the calmest smile I could manage. On making sure we both get exactly what we deserve. She laughed nervously, brushing it off. But I saw the way her knuckles tightened on the edge of her seat. She didn't know if it was a compliment or a threat. Perfect. By midweek, the tension was thick enough to cut. She flitted around the house like a bird, pretending everything was fine but sneaking glances at me when she thought I wasn't looking. Thursday evening, she finally snapped. Are you mad at me or something? She demanded, standing in the doorway while I typed at my desk. Mad. I looked up slowly, raising an eyebrow. Why would I be mad? I don't know. You've just been different, she said, crossing her arms. Quieter. I leaned back in my chair. Maybe I'm just done being dramatic. Her lips parted. She remembered those words. She'd used them to dismiss me, to belittle me. Hearing them thrown back with a smile shook her more than shouting ever could. I don't like this, she muttered, turning away. You don't have to, I said. She froze for half a second before walking out. That night, when the house was quiet, I made my final preparations. Marcus's documents were ready: divorce petition, division of assets, custody strategy for the house. All waiting in a neat beige folder. All timed to hit the court system the same day. She thought we'd be flying off to somewhere tropical. But there was one last move I needed to make. A move she'd never see coming. I opened my laptop and composed an email. The subject line was simple: for your review. The attachments? Photos, texts, emails, all organized in a clean, chronological PDF. Recipient, her boss. See, affairs are messy. But affairs with coworkers? They're catastrophic. And she had been stupid enough to mix business with pleasure. Contractor boy wasn't just her fling. He was a vendor for her company. The kind of detail that HR departments love to sink their teeth into. I didn't hit send. Not yet. Timing was everything. The email would be my ace card, the one I'd play when she least expected it. Friday came. She dressed in that black dress I'd seen in the hotel photos, twirling once in the mirror like she was still 25. Big client tonight. I asked, tying my shoes. The biggest, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then don't keep him waiting, I replied, patting her shoulder on the way out. Her eyes narrowed. She opened her mouth to respond, then thought better of it. She grabbed her purse and left. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. Instead, I sat on the porch, sipping bourbon as the sun went down, and thought about the moment that was coming. The moment she'd walk through the door expecting me to be clueless, still holding on to her lies. Except this time, there would be no box to hide her secrets in. I would open it right in front of her. And when she saw what I had, when she realized every text, every receipt, every smirk had been cataloged with precision, that would be the moment she understood. I wasn't the placeholder anymore. I was the executioner. Friday night dragged into Saturday morning. She tiptoed into the house around 1:30 a.m., smelling of perfume that wasn't hers and laughter that wasn't for me. She probably thought I was asleep upstairs. Truth was, I was in the office, light off, listening to her heels click across the tile. She paused outside my door. I held my breath. Then she moved on, climbing the stairs, humming faintly. She didn't check the office. She never did. In her mind, my life stopped when she wasn't around. Saturday morning, I acted normal. Cooked breakfast. Asked about her client dinner. She spun a story so sloppy, I almost admired the confidence it took to tell it. That afternoon, I put phase 2 into motion. a quiet lunch with Marcus, then a quick stop at the bank. By evening, half our joint funds were secured in my name only, documented and sealed. She noticed nothing. She was too busy texting, too busy playing dress-up in front of a mirror, convinced she still had all the power. And for the first time in months, I felt the thrill of it, knowing I could already see her fall, even as she strutted on the edge of the cliff. Sunday was the day I gave her the rope. I suggested we host dinner, invite a couple of her friends, make it look like we were still that glossy couple in matching wine glasses. She jumped at it, of course. Nothing she loved more than putting on a show. Around 6, her friends poured in, gushing about the beautiful home and perfect marriage. She basked in it, pouring them Chardonnay, laughing too loud, nudging me like we were co-stars in her fantasy. I played along, toasted to love, smiled at her friends, let them snap photos. And when she leaned over to kiss my cheek, I didn't flinch. Because I knew something she didn't. Half of the people smiling in that living room had already received an email from me earlier that afternoon. Not an explosive one. Not yet. Just a subtle one. A forwarded screenshot of her with Mr. Contractor, captioned, "Thought you should know." The silence in their eyes told me they'd read it. The fake smiles told me they didn't dare mention it. And she? She was too busy soaking up the spotlight to notice the current running beneath her feet. That night, when the guests left and the dishes clattered in the sink, she sighed happily. See? We're still the perfect couple. I kissed her forehead. Perfect. And in that moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. Monday morning. The day everything shifted. She dressed for work in her sharpest blazer, humming again. She picked up her purse, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Don't wait up." I smiled. Wouldn't dream of it. The second the door closed, I grabbed the beige folder Marcus had prepared. Every photo, every message, every receipt, all neatly compiled. I drove downtown, walked into the courthouse, and filed the petition. Just like that, the marriage was over. But I wasn't done. Not even close. On my way home, I hit send on the email draft I'd been saving. The one addressed to her boss. It included everything: texts, hotel bookings, time-stamped photos. The subject line was short and lethal: conflict of interest. By the time she walked into her office, HR was already waiting. By the time she checked her phone, half her friends had gone quiet. By the time she tried to call me, I was already meeting with a realtor to put the house on the market. At noon, Marcus texted me. She's been served. Papers in hand. I sat at my desk, sipping coffee, staring at the oak box. For months, it had been a vault of secrets. Now it was empty. Mission complete. And I felt lighter than I had in years. The cruel part, the part she never saw coming, wasn't the divorce. It wasn't the job loss, or the whispers among her friends, or even losing the house she'd once called her forever home. It was where she landed. See, I didn't just want to cut her out. I wanted her to fall into the arms of the man she thought was her escape. So when the dust settled, when the money was divided and the house sold, I let her have him. The contractor. The great prize. The man who had been her thrill, her danger. Except I had one final card to play. Weeks earlier, I'd done my homework. Dug through county records, contracts, permits. And what do you know? Mr. Contractor had a little problem. Multiple problems, actually: fraudulent permits, unpaid taxes, one lawsuit from a client who claimed he'd vanished mid-job. I sent it all to her anonymously, in a neat little folder labeled, "Meet Your Future." She didn't know it came from me. She just knew her new life was shackled to a man drowning in legal mess. I still remember the day she showed up at the house to talk. Papers were signed, the locks were changed, but she stood on the porch in tears. "You ruined me," she whispered. I looked her in the eye, calm as ever. "No, you ruined yourself. I just handed you the mirror." And with that, I shut the door. That was the end of it. Unexpected to her, inevitable to me. The oak box sits empty now, polished and closed, sitting on my shelf. A reminder. She thought I'd crumble. She thought I'd beg. She thought she was playing chess. But the truth? She was playing checkers. And I'd already won.